A cave that big should not have its own weather, its own forest, or animals that lost their eyes entirely. A lumberjack in Vietnam stumbled onto its entrance during a rainstorm, with no gear and no way down, then spent 18 years just trying to find that same spot again. What waited past the entrance changed how the world measures caves. The lumberjack who found something in a storm. In December 1990, a local man named Ho Con, born in 1969 in Phong Nha village, was walking through dense jungle in Vietnam's Quang Binh province, searching for agarwood, a valuable fragrant resin found in certain forest trees and long prized as a source of income for people living in this remote, mountainous stretch of central Vietnam. Caught by heavy rain, Con sought shelter beside a rocky limestone cliff and noticed something unusual, a deep opening in the rock, with a strong wind roaring out of the darkness, carrying mist and the distant sound of rushing water far below. Con had no equipment and no way to safely climb down into whatever lay beneath that opening, so he noted its rough location and moved on. The encounter stayed with him, but without any pressing reason to return, and with no clear landmark visible from above to mark the exact spot again, since the entrance sat hidden deep within thick, largely untouched jungle canopy, with no distinguishing feature visible from any distance. The memory of that specific cave entrance gradually faded over the following years. Con continued his ordinary life, working in and around the forests near Phong Nha, a region that would eventually become internationally known for its concentration of limestone caves, largely unaware that the brief, rain-soaked encounter he had experienced would eventually connect him to one of the most significant natural discoveries of the modern era. That single, brief, rain-soaked encounter would have easily stayed a private memory forever, if not for a British caving team that arrived in the same region years later, actively searching local villages for exactly the kind of unusual cave story Con happened to be carrying around in the back of his mind. 18 years to find it again, Howard and Deb Limbert, experienced cavers working with what later became known as the British Cave Research Association, had been conducting exploratory caving expeditions across Vietnam's Phong Nha Ke Bang National Park for years, actively seeking out local villagers who might know of unusual, unexplored cave openings scattered throughout the surrounding jungle. This region of Vietnam already held a well-earned reputation among cavers internationally, since Phong Nha Ke Bang had already produced hundreds of documented caves by the time the Limberts began their work there, making it one of the most heavily karst-shaped landscapes anywhere in Southeast Asia. While speaking with Ho Con sometime in the early 2000s, the caving experts learned he recalled finding a cave that seemed to have clouds and a river moving somewhere inside it, details specific enough to genuinely intrigue Howard and Deb, who urged Con to try locating the same entrance again. That search proved far harder than anyone expected. Skangye made repeated attempts to relocate the exact spot over the following years, and after enough failed searches, the British team began to seriously worry the cave might simply stay lost in the jungle forever, its precise location swallowed by dense vegetation, and Can's own understandably fuzzy decades-old memory of one brief, rain-interrupted encounter. Finally, in 2008, while out on another routine foraging trip through the same general area, Con stumbled onto the entrance again, and this time he carefully studied and recorded the surrounding terrain and mountain directions, closely enough to be confident he could find his way back a second time, marking trees and taking careful mental note of the specific route through the jungle, so the years of frustrated searching would not repeat themselves. By early 2009, Con was finally ready to lead a full expedition team directly to the spot, setting up what would become one of the most significant cave surveys in modern history, though nobody involved yet had any real sense of just how large the space waiting for them actually was. The team that went in blind. In March 2009, the British Vietnam Caving Expedition Team, working jointly with the Geography Department at Hanoi University of Science, organized a formal survey expedition, guided by Ho Con, back to the cave entrance he had rediscovered the previous year. On April 7, 2009, team member Peter McNabb became the first person in the expedition, and reportedly the first person ever, to actually descend into the cave itself, requiring specialized equipment to manage a steep 50-meter drop right at the entrance, a drop that had also kept Con himself from ever climbing down during his original 1990 encounter. This was, notably, Con's own first time actually entering the cave he had first stumbled across nearly 2 decades earlier, since he had never previously possessed the equipment necessary to make that same initial descent safely. McNabb was joined on that same expedition by fellow team members Jonathan Sims, Adam Spillane, Trevor Wales, and Helen Brooke, along with Nguyen Du Con from Hanoi University's Geography Department. McNabb later described the experience directly, saying every corner they went around felt completely new and completely exciting, and that the cave simply kept getting better and better the deeper they pushed into it. The team pressed forward through what quickly proved to be an enormous, continuously expanding underground passage, but their initial expedition eventually ran into a genuine obstacle. Near the far end of the cave, an enormous, towering wall of hardened mineral deposit, known as flowstone, blocked any further progress, rising high enough that a faint glimmer of light could be seen far above it, hinting that the cave passage might continue even further beyond. Without proper technical climbing equipment on hand, for a wall of that scale, the team had no choice but to turn back. Even with the expedition cut short partway through, the measurements the team had already gathered were enough for Howard Limbert to announce, on April 14, 2009, that this newly surveyed cave, which the team named Son Doong, meaning Mountain River Cave in Vietnamese, appeared to have the largest cross-section of any known cave anywhere on the planet. Confirming that claim beyond doubt, and actually finishing the survey properly, would require an entirely separate return trip, the wall that took another year to climb. In March 2010, Howard Limbert and his team returned to Son Doong, this time equipped with specialized technical climbing gear, specifically brought along to overcome the massive calcite wall that had stopped the previous year's expedition, a formation the team had already started calling the Great Wall of Vietnam. Rising roughly 90 meters high, the wall represented the final significant barrier standing between the explorers and a full, complete survey of the entire cave system. This second expedition also included scientists and a film crew from National Geographic Television, there specifically to document both the technical climb itself and the broader process of confirming exactly what the team had actually discovered. Using proper climbing equipment this time, the team successfully scaled the Great Wall of Vietnam and continued onward, finally completing a full survey of the cave and exiting through the far end on March 17, 2010. Their finished measurements showed a total surveyed length of nearly 9 kilometers, with an overall volume of roughly 38.5 million cubic meters, findings that National Geographic Television subsequently featured, declaring Son Doong the largest natural cave anywhere in the world. That formal confirmation and the sheer scale the survey team had just proven with hard, verifiable measurements only raised an even bigger question. Understanding exactly how a single cave passage could grow large enough to house a landmark discovery like this required looking closely at the specific, patient geological process that carved it out in the first place. If you're enjoying this deep dive, hitting subscribe means you won't miss the next one. How Big is Big Son Doong sits within the core zone of Phong Nha Kẻ Bàng National Park, carved into limestone belonging to one of the oldest limestone massifs anywhere in Asia, dated to somewhere between 400 and 450 million years old. The cave passage itself, by contrast, is considerably younger, formed through the slow, patient erosive work of an underground waterway called the Rao Thuong River, cutting along a geological fault line in the Trong Son mountain range, a process researchers estimate took place somewhere between 2 and 5 million years, a genuine blink of an eye compared to the ancient rock the river was carving through. The finished cave measures nearly 9 kilometers long, with an average height of roughly 200 meters and an average width of about 150 meters. Figures confirmed through laser measurement during the original survey and subsequently accepted by senior karst geologists, including Dr. Tony Waltham. The Guinness Book of World Records officially recognized Son Doong as the world's largest natural cave in its 2013 edition, a distinction specifically referring to overall passage volume rather than total length, since a separate cave, Mammoth Cave in Kentucky, still holds the record for the longest mapped cave system anywhere on Earth, thanks to its enormous network of interconnected passages. Son Doong, by comparison, is recognized specifically for having the single largest continuous cave passage by volume, more than twice the size of Deer Cave in Malaysia, which had previously held that particular title. To put those numbers into a more familiar perspective, the main passage is genuinely spacious enough to comfortably fit an entire 40-story skyscraper inside, without the building's rooftop touching the cave ceiling, and some sections stand tall enough that a large commercial aircraft could theoretically fly through certain stretches of the passage. Researchers divide the cave into roughly 3 distinct sections, beginning at the entrance with an actively flowing underground river, continuing through the massive Doline sections further inside, and finally reaching older, drier fossil passages toward the far end near the Great Wall of Vietnam, each section presenting its own distinct combination of geological features and, as researchers would soon discover, its own distinct forms of life. That kind of scale alone would make Son Doong an extraordinary geological landmark on its own. What actually happens inside a space that large, once you understand it, is not simply one enormous, empty stone tunnel, turns out to be considerably stranger and considerably more alive than the numbers alone suggest. The cave that makes its own weather. Roughly 500,000 years ago, according to researchers studying the site, sections of the cave's ceiling collapsed in specific locations where the overlying limestone happened to be thinner and structurally weaker, carved away over time by the same underground river running beneath. These collapses created two massive openings researchers call dolines, essentially giant natural skylights piercing straight down through the mountain above into the cave passage far below. Doline 1 alone rises approximately 304 meters from the cave floor up to its rim at the surface, making it one of the deepest and most striking sinkholes anywhere in Southeast Asia. Those two dolines do far more than simply let sunlight reach the cave floor in scattered patches. Thanks to the sheer volume of the cave combined with the steady flow of air, moisture, and temperature regulation happening through these open skylights, Sondung genuinely maintains its own distinct, localized weather pattern, sitting apart from conditions on the surface directly above it. Temperatures inside stay relatively stable year-round, generally holding somewhere between 22 and 25 degrees Celsius during summer months and 17 to 22 degrees Celsius in winter. Visitors camping near the dolines have reported watching actual clouds form and drift through the open skylight sections of the cave, a genuinely strange sight for anyone used to thinking of weather as something that only happens outdoors, under open sky, and a phenomenon largely explained by warm, moist air rising off the underground river, meeting the cooler air pouring in through the open ceiling above. That same combination of filtered natural light, steady humidity, and consistent underground temperature turned out to be exactly what a very unlikely kind of ecosystem needed to take root, hundreds of feet beneath solid limestone. The jungle that shouldn't be underground beneath Doline 2. Specifically, researchers have documented a genuine, thriving patch of forest growing directly on the cave floor, an area explorers and researchers have nicknamed the Garden of Edam. Sunlight filtering down through the open skylight above, combined with rainwater falling directly into the cave, and the space's unusually stable humidity, has allowed more than 200 distinct plant species to take root and grow inside this specific section of Sondung, including climbing vines, ferns, mosses, shrubs, and trees that researchers have measured reaching heights of more than 40 meters tall. That underground forest supports animal life well beyond what most people would expect to find living inside any cave. Reports connected to the site have described flying foxes, various primate species including rare langurs, and even occasional sightings connected to endangered tiger populations, known to range through the surrounding national park, drawn into the cave's jungle-covered dolines by the same shelter, water, and food sources available in the forest above ground nearby. That specific detail, a genuine, self-sustaining patch of rainforest thriving hundreds of feet underground, complete with large mammals passing through it, represents exactly the kind of ecological finding that should not realistically exist inside any cave anywhere on Earth, and yet there it sits, growing steadily larger with each passing year as roots continue spreading and canopy cover continues thickening beneath the open sky far above. Just beyond the reach of that filtered sunlight, in the sections of Sondung that never see daylight at all, an entirely different and even stranger category of life has been quietly adapting to total, permanent darkness for a very long time. The animals that lost their eyes in the permanently dark stretches of Sondung, away from either Doline's reach. Biologists have documented multiple species of fish living inside underground streams and pools, scattered throughout the cave system. Cut off from any light source whatsoever across countless generations, these fish have lost the biological features that would otherwise require energy to maintain, without any practical benefit in total darkness, developing without functioning eyes and without any skin pigmentation, leaving their bodies pale and largely transparent. Fish are far from the only creatures researchers have found adapting this same way inside Sondung. Biodiversity surveys conducted at the site have documented numerous cave-adapted insects and arachnids, including woodlice, millipedes, spiders, and scorpions, several of which share that same striking combination of missing eyes and colorless, transparent bodies. To date, researchers have identified more than 7 entirely new species, discovered specifically within Sondung, that had never been formally documented anywhere else in the scientific record before, alongside multiple bat species and a wide range of additional insects still being studied and cataloged by ongoing biodiversity surveys. Bats in particular play an outsized role in the cave's broader ecosystem, since their guano, deposited across certain sections of the cave floor over countless generations, provides a critical nutrient source supporting smaller organisms living in total darkness, that would otherwise have almost nothing to feed on so far from any sunlight-driven food chain. That steady stream of new species discoveries, arriving years after the cave's initial 2009 survey, underscores just how much about Sundung's full biological picture still remains only partially understood even now. Alongside all of that living, breathing biology, the cave's solid mineral formations have their own separate, equally strange story to tell. The stalagmite, bigger than a building. Roughly 1 kilometer from Dolin 1, researchers documented a single stalagmite, a mineral formation that slowly builds upward from a cave floor as water drips down and deposits tiny amounts of calcium carbonate, layer by layer over an enormous span of time, that reaches a full 80 meters tall. Nicknamed Hand of Dog, this specific formation is considered the largest natural stalagmite ever recorded anywhere on Earth, having grown to its current towering height purely through the same patient, repetitive dripping process responsible for every far smaller stalagmite found in caves worldwide. Scattered across sections of the cave floor, researchers have also documented cave pearls, small, rounded mineral formations that build up gradually as dripping water deposits calcium carbonate around a tiny grain or fragment resting inside a shallow pool, with the pearls slowly rolling and rotating just enough to grow into a smooth, roughly spherical shape rather than a jagged, irregular lump. Some of Sundung's cave pearls have grown to roughly the size of a baseball, a genuinely unusual scale for this type of formation. Near Dolin 1, researchers have also documented an unusual formation called phytokarst, created when light-seeking cyanobacteria, a type of blue-green algae, secrete a mild acid capable of slowly dissolving the surrounding limestone and calcite, carving delicate, pencil-like formations that visibly point in the general direction of available sunlight, even though the organisms themselves are not actually growing directionally toward the light in any deliberate sense. Elsewhere in the cave, visitors and researchers alike have documented terraced, calcium-lined pools, called gore pools, their shallow basins often coated in vivid green algae, wherever enough sunlight reaches them to support that growth. Between an 80-meter stalagmite, baseball-sized mineral pearls, and rock formations quite literally sculpted by living algae, Sundung's solid mineral formations turned out to be every bit as strange and record-breaking as its living jungle and blind, colorless wildlife. Even after more than a decade of dedicated study, though, parts of this same cave system have continued to surprise the very researchers who thought they already understood its full extent. The dive that went deeper than anyone expected. In 2019, a team of 3 divers, each of whom had previously taken part in the widely publicized rescue of a trapped Thai youth football team from a flooded cave the year before, were invited to explore a waterlogged pit inside Sundung that had never been investigated. The specific pit appeared to potentially connect to nearby chambers not yet included in the cave's official surveyed footprint. The divers descended to a depth of 77 meters before being forced to turn back, having run low on the oxygen needed to safely continue any further. Based on what they had already observed on the way down, the team estimated the same tunnel could plausibly extend to a depth of around 120 meters. Howard Limbert, who helped organize the dive, explained directly at a press conference announcing the attempt that, if this specific tunnel does eventually connect through to another nearby cave system, it would make Sundung easily the largest cave in the world by an even wider margin, one that Limbert suggested would likely never be overtaken by any future discovery elsewhere. That specific underwater passage remains only partially explored even now, a clear, tangible reminder that a cave already confirmed as the largest on the planet may still hold entire sections nobody has ever actually seen firsthand. Given how much both the ecology and the geology of Sundung keep turning out to be, protecting the site properly from unrestricted human traffic became just as important as continuing to study it scientifically. Why only 1,000 people are allowed in each year? Adventure tourism at Sundung officially began in 2013, several years after the cave's initial scientific survey concluded, and access has remained tightly controlled ever since. Only one authorized tour operator holds permission to lead expeditions into the cave, and total visitor numbers are capped at roughly 1,000 people per year, with trips only running during a limited window between January and August, timed specifically around the region's drier season to reduce the risk of dangerous flash flooding inside the cave's active underground river sections. That strict cap reflects genuine, practical concerns beyond simple exclusivity. Every visit requires an extended multi-day trek through dense, difficult jungle terrain, since the cave has no vehicle access of any kind, and the fragile cave pearls, delicate phytokarst formations, and the still developing underground forest ecosystem could all suffer real, permanent damage from uncontrolled foot traffic. Guides working within the cave actively direct visitors around especially sensitive areas, including specific sections near the dolines where phytokarst formations grow, precisely to keep casual tourism from undoing what took nature millions of years to build in the first place. Expedition groups typically camp overnight near one of the dolines during the multi-day trek through the cave, giving visitors the rare experience of falling asleep and waking up under an open patch of visible night sky positioned directly above them despite being deep inside a mountain, before continuing on through the fossil passages toward the technically demanding climb up the Great Wall of Vietnam that marks the final stretch of the journey. That same careful, deliberately limited approach to access has also meant that scientific study of the cave has proceeded relatively slowly and carefully in the years since its initial 2009 and 2010 surveys, leaving plenty of the cave's fuller ecological and geological picture still an active, ongoing area of research rather than a settled, fully cataloged subject. What scientists still don't know. Even with more than 15 years of study since Sondung's initial survey, real open questions remain about the cave's full extent and its complete biological picture. The 2019 dive into the previously unexplored waterlogged pit was forced to turn back well before reaching the bottom of the passage, leaving open the genuine possibility that additional connected chambers, potentially expanding the cave's already record-breaking size even further, remain entirely unmapped and unexplored to this day. Researchers also continue documenting new species inside the cave on an ongoing basis, meaning the current count of more than 7 newly identified species discovered specifically at Sondung is very likely incomplete, particularly given how much of the cave's permanently dark sections, home to its most specialized and unusual blind, colorless wildlife, remain difficult and expensive to access and study in detail. Similarly, while researchers have documented more than 200 plant species growing inside the cave's 2 dolines, the full long-term ecological relationship between that underground forest and the surrounding jungle above ground, including exactly how animals like tigers and flying foxes move between the 2 environments, remains an active area of ongoing field study rather than a fully settled scientific picture. Even the cave's total confirmed volume, currently listed at 38.5 million cubic meters based on the original 2009 and 2010 survey work, could potentially shift upward again if the unexplored 2019 dive site or other undocumented passages eventually get fully mapped. That same honest, acknowledged uncertainty, a record-breaking cave whose exact boundaries and whose full biological census both remain genuinely unfinished even now, is precisely what continues drawing researchers back to Sondung more than a decade and a half after Håkan first led a caving team down into the dark space he had originally stumbled onto during a rainstorm. Verdict here is where things actually stand. Sondung Cave, formed over the last 2 to 5 million years as the underground Rao Thuong River, carved through limestone rock more than 400 million years old, was first encountered by local man Håkan in December 1990, then lost again for 18 years before he finally relocated its entrance in 2008. In 2009, a British-Vietnam caving expedition team led by Howard and Deb Limbert conducted the first formal survey, with Peter McNabb becoming the first person to descend into the cave, and returned in 2010 with proper climbing equipment to scale the 90-meter Great Wall of Vietnam and complete a full survey confirming a length of nearly 9 kilometers and a volume of 38.5 million cubic meters, earning Guinness World Records recognition as the largest natural cave on Earth in 2013. Inside, 2 massive skylight collapses called dolines have created the cave's own stable microclimate, complete with drifting clouds and a genuine underground rainforest known as the Garden of Eden, home to more than 200 plant species, reported tiger and langur activity, and an 80-meter-tall stalagmite called Hand of Dog, the largest ever recorded. In the cave's permanently dark sections, biologists have documented blind, transparent fish and multiple newly identified insect and arachnid species that have never been found anywhere else on Earth. A 2019 dive by 3 divers who had previously helped rescue a trapped Thai youth football team explored a previously unmapped underwater passage to a depth of 77 meters before being forced to turn back, leaving open the real possibility that Sondung extends even further than currently confirmed. None of what explorers and scientists have found inside that Vietnamese mountain required anything beyond patient geology, an unusually favorable combination of light and moisture, and millions of years of uninterrupted time. It produced a cave large enough to swallow a skyscraper, strange enough to grow its own weather and its own jungle, and quiet enough that a fish could spend its entire evolutionary history there without ever needing eyes at all. If you enjoyed this breakdown, Make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.